Hillview was a quiet town nestled in the folds of the Montana mountains, the kind of place where time passed without hurry, and the sky always felt just a little closer. The streets were narrow, framed by tall pines and the occasional rusting mailbox. Most homes were old, built from timber, their porches worn by decades of boots and seasons. Yards were filled not with fences, but with clover, dandelions, and the faded memories of summer barbecues. On the edge of town stood the Collins house, modest pale blue with white trim, a wraparound porch, and wind chimes that only moved when they wanted to. Inside lived a young couple and their 5-year-old son, Nathan. And with them, always within arm's reach, was Jasper. Jasper wasn't a dog you passed without noticing. Broad-shouldered and low to the ground, he had the heavy build of a Bernese mountain dog and the sharp focus of a husky. His coat was thick and storm-dark, with a splash of white across the chest. But it was his eyes people remembered. One deep brown, the other a clear, unnatural blue, like a frozen lake. He didn't bark much, he didn't need to. 3 years earlier, he had wandered out of the forest at the edge of town, ribs showing, paws cracked, and collapsed on the Collins front lawn. Nathan had been the first to find him, and since then, the two had been inseparable. Jasper followed him everywhere, from the garden to the school bus stop and back again. He slept curled by the boy's bed, breathing in rhythm with each quiet night. That night in August, everything was still. A warm wind moved through the hills, brushing through the tall grass like fingers searching for something lost. The moon hung low, spilling silver light across rooftops. Inside the Collins house, the family slept soundly, mother and father upstairs, Nathan tucked beneath a blanket printed with dinosaurs. Outside, the air was thick with the hum of crickets. Nothing stirred. But in the basement, behind old shelves and a broken dehumidifier, something sparked. A wire, frayed and too long ignored, caught a breath of energy. It clicked once, like a match being struck. Then again, a small flash bloomed in the darkness, tiny, harmless at first. It touched the wooden beams near the ceiling, licked them, then held. The fire began slowly, as if unsure of itself. It crawled along the joists, hesitant and thin, following the wood grain like veins. Minutes passed. The heat grew bolder. It found the edge of the staircase, then climbed. By the time the flames reached the floorboards, the house above remained still, untouched. But below, the air had begun to shift. The smoke moved through the vent shafts like a ghost, and on the first floor, Jasper stirred. He didn't wake to noise. There hadn't been any. There were no sirens, no shouts. But his ears perked. His nose twitched. He stood slowly, rising from the carpet at the foot of Nathan's bed, body rigid, eyes scanning shadows. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He simply knew. Something had changed, and he was already moving. By the time the fire reached the kitchen, Jasper was already at Nathan's door. The heat had begun to rise, slow at first, then with growing confidence, like a tide that refused to retreat. Smoke curled along the hallway, thin tendrils at first, then thicker, darker, clinging to the ceiling like something alive. Jasper barked once, short and sharp, a signal, not a panic. The sound cut through the boy's sleep like a pin through fabric. Nathan sat up, bleary-eyed, his small hands rubbing at the edges of dreams. He blinked at the strange flicker pulsing through the crack beneath the door, the glow not golden like morning, but red and unnatural, like the light from a bad dream. Before he could speak, Jasper was already beside the bed, gripping the hem of the boy's pajama shirt gently in his teeth, pulling, urging. Nathan slid off the mattress with a soft thud. His feet hit the floor, already warm. He coughed. The air bit at his throat, dry and sharp, filled with something he didn't yet understand. He tried to speak, but another cough caught in his chest. Jasper was already nudging him forward, toward the door. Outside, the wood groaned. Somewhere below, a beam cracked. Jasper pushed the door open with his shoulder. Smoke poured in like a wave. The hallway was thick with it, turning everything into a shifting blur of shadows and red light. The dog moved first, staying low, every muscle tight with purpose. Nathan followed, stumbling once, catching himself against the wall. Jasper paused, looked back, then kept going. His fur was already streaked with soot. The skin around his snout tingled from the heat. Each step down the staircase was a risk. The wood moaned under their weight, softening from beneath. The railing was warm, then hot. Nathan's small fingers slipped as he reached for it. He tripped, and for a second he didn't get up. Jasper turned. He pressed his shoulder against the boy's side, bracing him, then moved again. Slower now, but determined. His breathing was rough, shallow. The smoke was crawling deeper. At the bottom of the stairs, the kitchen was gone, consumed. Where once were cabinets and wallpaper, now bloomed a wall of fire, stretching up and out with greedy arms. The wallpaper peeled like skin. The paint cracked and blistered. The air howled. Jasper veered left, away from the kitchen, toward the front of the house. Nathan cried out, his voice lost in the roar. But the dog was already guiding him again, using his body like a shield. Then, through the smoke, a shape appeared. A silhouette at the window. A face, hands, a shout. It was the neighbor, Mr. Aldridge, who had seen the glow from across the yard and come running barefoot through the grass. He smashed the glass with a shovel, shouted again. His voice reached them this time. Jasper bounded toward the window. The heat lashed at his sides, but he pressed on. He jumped once, hitting the wall beside the opening, falling back, then jumped again. He barked, urging the boy forward. Nathan understood. He climbed onto a fallen chair, then up onto the narrow windowsill. The neighbor reached through. Nathan's small hand met his. The man pulled. Jasper stepped back, eyes on the boy, smoke rising like fog around his legs. Nathan was out, carried away, safe, and Jasper, still inside. Jasper tried to follow. His body coiled, ready to leap, but as he sprang toward the broken window, the flames surged. The air near the opening erupted in a column of fire, curling inward like a living wall. The heat struck him like a blow. He recoiled instinctively, landing hard on scorched floorboards. His paws slipped. The wood beneath him had begun to soften. The varnish bubbling, the grain blackening. The oxygen was vanishing. Each breath came thinner, tighter. The smoke hung low now, pressing downward like a ceiling collapsing in slow motion. The air was no longer air. It was ash, heat, and silence. Jasper moved again. He turned from the window and bolted across the room, his claws scraping, slipping, pushing toward the hallway. He knew the house, every door, every turn. He had paced it 1,000 times in quiet hours, chasing light, shadows, dreams. But now, the doors were not doors. They were flames. Each room, each path sealed behind roaring heat. Still, he searched. One room, then another. The guest bathroom, already engulfed. The laundry room, collapsed ceiling. The pantry, nothing but smoke. His breathing quickened, not from panic, but from the effort. His legs began to fail him. He slowed, panting, coughing, the fire chasing every inch of him. He was burning. The tips of his fur curled, blackened. His sides blistered. The skin beneath his coat stung with every motion. Still, he moved, stumbling now, seeking the next chance. Not to escape. He had passed the threshold of instinct. This was memory. This was duty. This was presence. He made it to the center of the house, near the kitchen, where the floor dipped slightly. There, his legs gave out. He didn't collapse from fear. There was no panic in him. He folded to the floor because his body was done, his strength spent. His chest rose once, then again. Slower. Smoke wrapped around him like a blanket, thick and final. Outside, he heard voices. They were distant, distorted, muffled through layers of fire and time. One was Nathan's, high-pitched, desperate, calling his name over and over like a chant. Another voice, deeper, broken, calling the boy back, trying to pull him away. Glass shattered again. A crowbar against the frame. A firefighter shouting. But the heat answered louder. Jasper didn't lift his head. He was beyond the door now, beyond escape, beyond noise. His eyes remained open, fixed toward the hallway, where moonlight used to touch the floor before bedtime, before fire, before the silence. There was no whine, no cry. He had done what he came for, and that was enough. By morning, the air above Hillview was heavy with the scent of scorched pine and wet soot. The rising sun cast long shadows across the smoldering remains of the Collins house, though most of the structure had collapsed into itself, reduced to a blackened outline on a foundation of memory. The fire department had worked through the night, dousing hot spots and searching for cause. In the end, the answer was simple and silent. A frayed wire beneath the staircase, left too long unseen. Neighbors stood behind yellow tape, murmuring in low voices. The wind picked at the ash, lifting it into slow spirals before letting it fall again like gray snow. Nothing had been salvageable. No photographs, no furniture, no books. Only the shape of things lingered, marked by melted frames and the shadows of what once was. Nathan was in the hospital. He had suffered minor burns and smoke inhalation, but he would recover. The doctors said he was lucky, but luck wasn't what had carried him out. He hadn't spoken much. He sat up in bed, a blanket around his shoulders, gaze fixed not on the IV drip or the window, but somewhere deeper. He whispered the same words again and again, not to anyone in particular, just to the space around him. Jasper's coming back, not in a voice of denial, but in something older than that. Conviction. It wasn't a child's fantasy. It was something quiet and still, like belief. Later that day, when the ruins had cooled enough for a team to enter, a firefighter emerged from the ash with something in his gloved hands. It was blackened, charred, but whole. A collar. The metal tag was still attached, though dulled by fire. It read one word, etched deep and now softened by heat. Jasper. The firefighter didn't speak. He simply held it out to Megan Collins, who stood with her arms wrapped around herself, sleeves damp from tears and dew. She took it without a sound. Her fingers trembled. But it wasn't for her. It was for Nathan. At the hospital, they placed it in his hands. He stared at it for a long time. The leather was rough and smelled of smoke. The tag was warm from her palm. He held it against his chest, small hand folded tight around it. His lips moved once, barely audible. "He's still mine." No one corrected him. No one dared. 2 weeks later, a cedar tree was planted near Hillview Elementary, just off the path where children played during recess. The soil was still soft, the grass around it torn in uneven patches where shovels had pressed down. At the tree's base, a small plaque was mounted on a stone. It read, "In memory of Jasper, the one who saved." Megan Collins stood nearby, a photograph held gently in both hands. In it, Nathan was laughing, his arms wrapped around the thick neck of a dog with mismatched eyes and a wide, patient face. The porch behind them was sunlit, cluttered with chalk drawings and forgotten shoes. That porch was gone now, but the image remained. Nathan stood a few feet away, not speaking. Something had changed in him. He no longer flinched at shadows. He no longer reached for the light switch in a darkened hallway. He had gone quiet, not in fear, but in a kind of stillness that came from understanding something too big for words. He visited the burned remains of the house almost every day, stepping over the warped frame of the front door, sitting on the edge of what used to be the porch. He didn't cry. He didn't call out. Sometimes he brought a biscuit or a piece of chicken wrapped in foil. He placed it carefully on a smooth stone where Jasper's water bowl once sat. Then he would sit beside it, legs crossed, watching the tree line as if waiting for someone he already knew wouldn't come, but still hoped might. Jasper hadn't returned, but he had never really left. Nathan's hands, when petting the new puppy the Collins family adopted a month later, moved slower, gentler. His voice, when it came, was softer, deliberate. He didn't chase or wrestle the pup the way other children might. He sat beside it, spoke in low tones, and watched it sleep like he was guarding something sacred. He named the puppy Scout, but sometimes, when no one was listening, he whispered a different name. Jasper had become something woven into him, not just memory, but instinct. In the way he walked through quiet places, in the way he paused before closing a door, in the way he watched the flicker of candles or a fire on TV, not with fear, but with a kind of reverence. He remembered, and he always would. By November, the town of Hillview had taken on its winter hush. The first snowfall came quietly, blanketing rooftops and empty yards in soft white silence. The place where the Collins house once stood had become overgrown with brittle weeds and wind-tossed grass, frozen in place like shadows that refused to lie down. Only the cedar tree near the school remained defiantly green, a single breath of summer in a world exhaling cold. One evening just after dusk, Nathan sat on the new front steps of their temporary home. The porch was smaller now, the house not yet filled with pictures or toys, but it was warm, and it held the sound of breathing. At his feet, the puppy Scout slept curled into a ball, its chest rising and falling in rhythm with the snowflakes drifting past the porch light. Nathan's eyes weren't on the yard or the street. They were on the sky. Smoke trailed lazily from a neighbor's chimney, unraveling into the navy blue above like a line drawn by invisible fingers. He watched it drift, watched it scatter. He didn't flinch. He didn't look away. He simply reached beneath the collar of his coat and closed his fingers around the metal tag that hung around his neck, a blackened, half-melted token etched with one name: Jasper. He never took it off. His parents had offered chains, cases, places to store it. He refused. It stayed with him, warm against his chest, like a heartbeat not quite his own. The world around him was still. Inside the house, the lights glowed golden behind drawn curtains. Dinner was waiting. So was the soft murmur of voices and the weight of blankets folded across the back of the couch. But Nathan stayed on the steps, listening. Not for something loud, but for what only silence could carry. He thought about the house that burned. He thought about the bark that woke him, the pull at his pajamas, the body that shielded his, the eyes that had looked at him without needing to be asked. He remembered everything, not as pain, but as presence. Sometimes, family wasn't just who stayed. Sometimes it was who stayed inside you, even when they were gone. Jasper had never needed a thank you. He had never waited for praise. He had done what he knew, what only he could. He had remained until the very end. And in doing so, he had changed the boy who once feared the dark. True love, Nathan now understood, wasn't "save me." It was, "I'll go with you, even if I don't come back." And in the snow, in the quiet, beneath a sky soft with stars and smoke, that love still burned, gentle, unwavering, eternal.